freedom's vanguard.
Welcome aboard, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of Freedom Link Radio. I'm Joe Joseph. Alongside me is Tim Watts of theamericantruthnetwork.com and Supreme Allied Commander of newsfocus.org.
That'd be me.
Tim?
Joe.
That is most certainly you, man. Boy, do we have a full plate tonight, folks, and some very interesting stories I want to get into. There's been a lot of talk and some news breaking about these mysterious sounds breaking out all over the world. And we're going to get into that later on this evening. But the first part of the show, I really want to dedicate to something that both Freedom Link Radio, FederalJack.com, and the Intel Hub are going to be working on and trying to expose, because there's some serious shenanigans going on right under our noses that we really, really need to get a grip on and make some people aware of it. So let's get into it. By the way, also, we're going to be talking a little bit of Ron Paul. His campaign came out with a 1-2 punch against some of his opponents. Also, the New York Police Department has gun scanners now. So, yeah, we'll be talking about that. Greece is going to default, which could start a contagion. Oh, it just gets better and better. So just sit tight, folks. This show is going to be jam-packed. I want to start off, though, by my good wife and the main, the producer, I guess you could call her, was what I call her. She does some digging and has a knack for finding stuff she's not supposed to. And so in so doing and digging around, she found something called bioethics.gov. Now, if you go to bioethics.gov, you'll find out that it's Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues. Now, you'd say, wow, well, that sounds very good. That sounds responsible. Looks like the president is, hey, maybe he's looking out for us. If you go to the About Us tab, it says simply, the Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues advises the president on bioethical issues that may emerge from advances in biomedicine and related areas of science and technology. The commission works with the goal of identifying and promoting policies and practices that ensure scientific research, healthcare delivery, and technical innovation that make sure they are conducted in an ethically responsible manner. Now you'd say again, wow, that's great, man. President Obama looking out for us. Way to go, bub. You know what I'm saying? Woo! Then you dive into certain things. And tonight, the focus from bioethics.gov is going to be Anthrax. Not the band, but the disease. And why do I say that? Well, if you go to their news tab, the latest news is Commission Update. Secretary, how do you say it again, Tim?
Sebelius.
Thank you. Sebelius asks the Commission for ethical advice on the development of medical countermeasures for children. Now, you have to say to yourself, medical countermeasures? Why? Why do we need medical countermeasures for children? When you think countermeasures, you're thinking attack. Something has to be attacking for you to have a countermeasure or something against. So you're looking at some sort of epidemic or some sort of biological disaster or attack of some sort. So we dive into this Secretary Sebelius, and she writes a letter. And this is all on this website. And the letter goes to Amy Gutman, who happens to be the chair of this commission. And it was just written on January 6th. Now, people know from past news that the government has been talking about for years wanting to develop an anthrax vaccine for children. And first, let me say this. Let me preface all this by saying, if there's going to be a widespread anthrax attack in this country, the first thing you have to realize is that anthrax, weaponized anthrax, has to be refined. It has to be really refined. Okay? There's only a couple of labs in the world that are capable of refining anthrax down to a weaponized form. And it's in the United States. So if you're going to get an anthrax attack on a widespread level in a weaponized manner, chances are it's going to be coming from the government. It's not going to be coming from Al-Qaeda. It's not going to be coming from a right-wing extremist. It's going to be coming from the government. So remember that as I go forward here. But it says, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is responsible for developing and stockpiling safe and effective medical countermeasures to protect the nation from bioterror attacks. While it has made significant progress towards this goal for adults, the development of appropriate medical countermeasures for children lags, in part due to challenges in collecting basic dose and immunogenicity studies in pediatric populations. Challenges! Yes, like, oh, by the way, it kills children and or causes permanent brain damage and suffering and a whole host of other things, but we'll get into that later. On October 28th, 2011, the HHS's National Biodefense Science Board released its report and recommendations on the challenges in the use of anthrax vaccine absorbed in the pediatric population as a component of post-exposure prophylaxis. Prophylaxis. The NBSB debated how best to obtain scientifically valid safety and immunogenicity data about AVA-PEP for children. And here we go. A complex issue with ethical, scientific, medical, legal, regulatory, and administrative challenges, which pretty much means it's impossible. In its recommendation, the NBSB concludes that it would be in the best interest of children to gather safety and immunogenicity data about AVA-PEP in children prior to an anthrax event rather than during a future crisis when the vaccine may be needed. So, case in point, this right here is a letter that's pretty much saying, based on this report, and this report, by the way, is all available on bioethics.gov. The name of the report, just so everybody knows, and let me see if I have it up. I don't know if I have it up.
I've got it, Joe. The Moral Science is the name of it, and then underneath that it says protecting participants in human subjects research. Now, excuse me, but that's kind of like, remember the No Child Left Behind program where they always put out something that's supposed to do something good, but it ends up having an adverse, effect. They're doing the opposite of what they say they're doing. So I'm a little squeamish when I see this title.
I am too. I am too. We've all talked and heard of and have been speaking of, these false flag type of events that could be coming to a city near you, especially as things start to degrade, both with the economy and everything else. And I want to get into that when we come back from break, only because to actually go through some of these scenarios is going to require a lot of time. And it's something that we really need to address and look for as time goes on, because if we know that a legitimate threat for anthrax, the only way it's going to come is from the government, then we got to take a look inside and see why that is. So we'll be right back. You're listening to Freedom Link Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Welcome back to the email. This is the CenturyLink.net. That's the Freedom Link at CenturyLink.net. Tim, one thing that we want to make sure we tell the listeners is that hour number 2, mysterious sounds, they've been popping up all over the world. And
That's
we're going to be
good stuff.
We got to talk about this. Hour number 2, we're going to be talking about this because this all plays in, folks. Everything is coming together. You have to look, when we talk globalism is exactly that. Globalism is more than just the economy. When you say globalism, it's not just an economic term. The powers that be, the elitists, they're running out of time. And you have to understand that they have to put this plan in motion now. Otherwise, they're not going to be successful. I mean, people are waking up at an enormous rate here.
Yeah, globalism is that friendly new term that they put on it because they got tired of New World Order, so they put air quotes now, globalism, to make it sound like, it's a friendly thing. It's just the world working together.
Yeah. So we were talking about, this anthrax vaccine for children. And we all know that an anthrax vaccine, let me give you my personal experience, because it's kind of important for people to understand. And I just so happen to have firsthand experience with the anthrax vaccine. Now, way back in 1996, I remember, I was stuck with it. And we were like the guinea pigs, if you will, of getting this anthrax vaccine. And before this anthrax vaccine, I didn't have to take a single note to remember things. I had a very, 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 very good memory, short-term memory. Didn't need reminders, nothing like that. After the anthrax vaccine, I mean, my life really changed because a lot of my short-term memory was just shot, done. Now, I mean, if I go to the grocery store, the missus sends me to the grocery store with a list. I forget things that are written on the list. I mean, you want to talk about bad. It's bad. So you have to understand there is some very bad side effects to anthrax. Go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say, now this was in the military for you. I don't think you mentioned that. This is when you were getting into the military, correct?
Absolutely. This was in the military, and this was prior to deploying to the Middle East. So this is one of the things. Well, if you go over there, Saddam's got this weaponized crap, and you got to take this anthrax vaccine. And if you don't, then you're going to get a big chicken dinner discharge. That's what they call bad conduct discharge, but we call it big chicken dinner. And that's it. Your career's over. You will forever be marred. You'll be working at 7-Eleven making coffee for the rest of your life. So, of course, everybody's like, man, I don't want to make coffee for the rest of my life. Get the hell out of here. All right, give me the damn shot. And it just so happened to be, it's a process. It's not just one shot. It ends up being like 3 shots. And then it's only good for about 18 months. It's not good for a long time. And you have to keep getting it. So anytime a ship would deploy or a unit would deploy over to the Middle East, these people were getting the anthrax vaccine. And there was a lot of side effects with the anthrax vaccine. So now I'm a grown man. Can you imagine, Tim, if they start clinical trials on children, what this is going to do to them? I can't even fathom the long-term effects of what they're going to do. So what I'm asking people to do is to write the Department of Health and Human Services and ask them, say, hey, you know what? Hey, you guys want to do child anthrax vaccine? Hey, no problem. You guys want to test it on children? No problem. Just do me a favor. Before you test it on any other kids in the populace, just test it on yours or your grandkids first.
Bingo.
Please, just do it to your kids first. And the CDC, make them the guinea pigs first. Then, if everything's safe and everything's hunky-dory, then go ahead and test it on my kids. Oh, but by the way, I don't consent to it, so go screw. So, I mean, This is what needs to happen on a large scale, Tim.
Yeah, again, you see how far that goes, You test your kids first, and then we'll see that program drop right away.
Absolutely, because they won't. It's the same reason why we wage illegal wars all over the world. It's because they don't send their kids over to the Arabian Gulf or to all these places where we wage illegal wars. Because if they did, I can't do that. I've got too much to lose. See, all you are, folks, are a number. That's all you are, if that. I saw a comment in the chat room that referred to us as useless eaters. Absolutely. In a lot of ways, you are. We all are viewed as useless eaters. And that mentality has to change. Tim, your thoughts on all this crap?
Well, I agree. They consider us goyim. Is that the old term they used to refer to? It's we are their testing ground, and they've been testing on the American populace for a long time. And if you folks don't believe it, Google sometime, human testing, on United States citizens. I think we talked about it the other night. In San Francisco, they tested serratia bacteria on the entire population. Of course, they didn't ask their permission. In Alaska, they fed the Indians, iodine 121. Of course, they didn't ask their permission. Here in Minneapolis, they were spraying in the 1950s. The mosquito trucks were going through, and they told people, "Oh, we're just spraying for mosquitoes." But no, that wasn't the case. And again, they didn't ask our permission. They didn't ask your permission. You just don't think that they're going to ask for it again now either. So, when you see Obama write down that this is to help protect people, in scientific research and healthcare, well, again, the Spock eyebrow goes up for me.
It certainly does. And in that report that was published in October of last year, one of the challenges involved was getting past the parental consent, because they know that they have to have, when it comes to children, they identified two groups. You can test it on adults, and you don't have to have informed consent with adults, apparently. But with children, you have to have proof of informed consent. And that's a challenge, according to them. And it should be a challenge. You shouldn't want to shoot up your kid with something like this. I don't care how much they want to pay you. And chances are they don't even want to pay you.
And what is the impetus for testing kids in the first place? I mean, these kids, they don't have their immune systems totally defined, yet early on. Do they set an age group test range? What is it about wanting to test kids and maybe not older adults?
Well, because they say, we have no data to support if this is going to be safe or not.
Well, duh.
Look, man, if it comes down to anthrax, I'll take my chances. Really, that's really what it comes down to. I'll take my chances, because I just can't, for the life of me, even fathom sticking my son or daughter with that poison. And that's what it is. And if it could do it to a 200-pound man, what it did to me, then I certainly don't even want to attempt to have my kids injected with this stuff. We'll be right back, folks. Don't go away. Lots coming up, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, folks, don't forget to listen to Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye every Wednesday and Friday from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. and Sundays from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Does a really good show, and he's my good buddy here on Orion Talk Radio. Right now, the subject, of course, is this bioethical panel that the president had put in place. And, they're promoting anthrax testing for children. But one thing that this does, and it's an interesting site, folks. You should actually go and peruse it a bit. If you look under the meetings portion of this website, you'll note that there's been a lot of meetings held already with regard to this panel. And meeting 4, session 10 is of significant importance, because this goes over testing that the government has done without informed consent on the public. Now, we know that this happened throughout history. We do. The informed people. The awakened, if you will. But it's very hard to find evidence and proof of it. So one of the good things about this meeting that was held, and this particular meeting, was that you had a lot of people actually show up at these events and speak to what has happened to them. And there's been a lot of subject matter experts that have spoken at these events to give their accounts of what happened. And it's weird because this is, to me, what this looks like, if you ask me. This looks like a data mining operation by the government. It's to see exactly what people know and what they're experiencing, because they know they're going to get people to come out and speak out about it. So it's kind of like a catch-22. Yes, people should speak out about it, but understand what the true intent is. They don't plan on fixing anything. It's not like they're going to stop testing people or doing things without your informed consent. But anyway, I want to draw your attention to the testimony of one Dr. John Hall from Texas. And he says, "My name is Dr. John Hall. I'm a medical doctor from Texas," and he is testifying before this committee. It says, "As I understand the memorandum from the president, it is for you to determine if current legislation is adequate in protecting individuals and if there is any ongoing experimentation. In reviewing the common rule, it is very obvious that there is a lot of loopholes to informed consent. All of the horrific experiments you have mentioned," now they mention this in this meeting, Willowbrook, MK Ultra, radiation experiments, mostly were done without informed consent. He is only repeating what this committee had told or had put out in previous meeting minutes. "They were funded by the DOD and intelligence agencies where I am not even sure you would know if there was an independent review board, much less if an independent review board is looking at informed consent. As a physician, relative to some of what you are hearing today, in the community we are seeing an alarming rate of complaints of use of electromagnetic weapons." Now this is going to be key for hour number 2. So you need to sit tight because this all ties together. "Microwave auditory effects, silent sound spectrums, EEG cloning, which has taken the lab out of the laboratory and into the home. Most of these from the research that we have reviewed can be done remotely. It seems to be more weapons research than medical research. I personally correspond with upwards of 1,500 victims, all complaining of identical complaints from every state in the nation of being exposed to electromagnetic radiation, non-ionizing radiation, for the use of cognitive control or behavior control." And he says, "I submitted a paper to you, and there is another paper submitted to each member from another physician in Kansas City alluding to the same thing." Now, that was Dr. John Hall's testimony, and I will try diligently to try to get him on the broadcast in the future so we can talk about what it is that he's finding in his research. But do you see what they're saying? He's saying electromagnetic weapons, not RF, not HARP. You have to understand there's a difference between electromagnetic weapons and HARP. Okay? HARP utilizes radio frequency and a lot of it. Now, HARP can be used to generate things like earthquakes. And yes, at a frequency low enough, yes, it can do things like mind control or torture. There is a purpose for that, but this is not it. This is not HARP. We're talking about longitudinal electromagnetic waves. This is Tesla technology. This is the stuff that Tesla used and came up with over 100 years ago.
The scalar technology.
Absolutely. Tim, you're pretty familiar with this kind of stuff.
Well, a little bit, yeah. You know, in Tesla, he was way ahead of his time, you know, and this is now the new secret. You know, you ever wonder why we were never taught about Tesla in high school? You know, they always talked about Einstein all the time, like he was the big guy. But, you know, Tesla, to me, That was the genius. And, there was a reason why we don't talk about Tesla, because that's secret technology they just don't want other people to be privy to. That's stuff they take inside for those deep, dark projects, within the military and the Department of Defense.
Absolutely. And one thing is interesting about these longitudinal EM waves. And basically, with this technology, you don't need electrical transmission lines. You don't need cancer anymore. Cancer would be a way of the past. There are so many different uses for this Tesla technology. And retired Colonel Tom Bearden did a tremendous amount of research over the course of his career in regards to Tesla technology and scalar waves, better known as longitudinal EM waves. And I will post a link in the chat room to a repository of his work. He's made things like over unity generators, which pull energy directly from the vacuum of space-time. Very interesting stuff. But this is all things that are available to the public. You can understand it. You can go see. He's got patents. He's got peer-reviewed articles. All of this kind of stuff at your fingertips. You can understand exactly why people don't want you to have or get a hold of this knowledge. And the reason is what, Tim, what would the oil lobby or the oil companies do if all of a sudden this technology comes out and they're not needed anymore?
Yeah, that's a good question, which is why they want to keep that stuff hidden. They want to bilk us for everything they can get with their oil, and until they can control the new technology, of course, Joe. Once they have control of that, then, Katie bar the door, all bets are off. Absolutely right.
And, it's dangerous, too, because along with the benefits come some very, very, very big risks associated with it, because this technology basically renders, say, nuclear weapons obsolete. It really, truly does, because, Tesla, and this was in the teens of the early 20th century, could crack the Earth in two. He had the technology to crack the Earth in two if he wanted to.
Yeah.
And it was so devastatingly powerful that when he was dying, he actually gave half of his work to the American government and half of it to the Soviet Union, just to split it up so no two people have all of this information at once. Now, of course, after a little bit of time, they shared, whether they meant to or not, they shared the technology with one another. And so they have at their access and fingertips these directed energy technologies, and it's very important to know that they're employing it today. So let's see how they're doing that. Let's go to, and I'm going to post, let me post this in the chat room. Here's one of many facilities that you may not be aware of, but that, I think you should know. I posted the link in the chat room. When we come back, we're going to talk about this new facility that they just broke ground on in Dahlgren. So stay tuned, sit tight. You're listening to Freedom Link Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network and AM 1650. Don't go away. All this talk of electromagnetic technology and everything else, you have to understand that this is all going to play in to what we're going to talk about in hour number 2. So please sit tight, because it gets better from here. I know it seems odd and kind of hard to understand or fathom that it could get even crazier, but it's going to. So I'm going to refer to the article I posted in the chat room, and this is New Naval Directed Energy Center to Impact Future Weapons for Naval and Joint Forces. Now, one thing to understand is that these electromagnetic weapons and electromagnetic technology, can take many, 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 many different forms. It's very versatile. Now, in this particular application, this is more geared towards like in-theater weapons technology. So, and this just validates the fact that this exists. If you have any doubts in your mind, they should be gone now. The Navy demonstrated its commitment to game-changing directed energy technology programs at the Naval Directed Energy Center. They have a Naval Directed Energy Center, for God's sakes. They had a ribbon-cutting ceremony held at the Naval Surface Warfare Center, Dahlgren Division, on when? Oh, the day before September 11th, September 10th. Ha-ha! This ribbon cutting celebrates NAVSEA's investment in the Navy's future. This new Naval Directed Energy Center will double the space available for developing our directed energy programs and provide laboratories, computing spaces, and offices to help us get the latest technology to our warfighters as soon as possible and protect them from harm's way. The focus of activity in this new building will be directed energy systems, an application that use what? Oh, electromagnetic energy to project military force and augment conventional capabilities. So I don't need to get into the rest of this article. You heard it, again, straight from the horse's mouth. I don't think you need to hear it from anybody else, because I think the Department of the Navy should be enough for you to understand that this stuff exists.
Has existed for quite some time, Joe. They've been doing research on electromagnetic weaponry since, I think since the 50s. You know, there's a... Say that again?
Can you give a little background on it, Tim?
Well, first off, you know, it's scary technology because, you know, it operates at the speed of light. It can kill, it can torture, it can enslave, you know, they claim, you know, the mind control. And regarding the mind control, there was a professor of social psychology back in the late 50s. His name was Saul B. Sells. And he submitted a proposal to the CIA. Gosh, those wonderful folks at the Central Intelligence Agency. What he said he was going to do, he was going to build them a sophisticated electroencephalography machine that would have an integral computational capacity to analyze and hopefully make sense of the brain waves it was recording. So in other words, what he was proposing was to make a machine that could tell the CIA what a person was thinking. And then this kind of dovetails with SQUAD, the SSSS, which they claim can actually implant thoughts in a human being's mind. It doesn't have to be something you conjure on your own. They can just, they can put a thought right in your mind. And again, it's very, very, very scary technology, scalar, Tesla stuff, you know, which has been hidden from folks for years, but yet the United States government and the military has been working on it since the 50s.
It's all very interesting stuff. And one thing to understand, folks, this is technology that Tesla was playing with in the early 20th century. So the governments of the world have had a long time to play around with this and develop it. So what you're seeing is only a very, very small slice of the pie, if you will. So the question is, then, why? What is the purpose of dealing with stuff that is it's so powerful, and it's in the hands of people that would use it for evil? Now, there's a lot of good purposes, and if you check the link that I put in the chat room, and I will put it again up there for you to see, this website, and it's www. And I'll spell it out, PRAHLAD.org. Pralad.org. It goes into Colonel Tom Bearden's work, and it's not just weaponized scalar technology, but it goes into a whole host of different uses of longitudinal EM waves, electromagnetic waves. Antoine Priori did a lot of work. He was a French doctor that did a lot of work with longitudinal EMs and found it was very, very effective in combating cancer. As a matter of fact, it eradicated it. And what they found out was electromagnetic waves actually help cells regenerate. And in some ways, it reversed aging. Now, we can't have that. Oh, no. We couldn't even hope to think that we could have a cure for cancer. Now, the pharmaceutical companies would just, they'd just say, oh, that's great. That's good. Yeah, yeah. No, of course they wouldn't. There's no money in cures.
They had cancer cured years ago anyway with Royal Rife, so.
That's right. I mean, and we got the nano silver and colloidal silver that combat it, and plus, hemp oil. There's so many different remedies, au natural, I guess you could say. But they're out there. So these things that are happening are all part of the game. We're going to get into that next hour, of course, especially the strange sounds that are popping up all over the world. And we're going to try to put the pieces together to get an idea of what the elitists, this cabal, may be planning for the population of the world, not just the United States. This is really, truly coming together. And it's important to understand all of this and try to wake up as many people as you can in a very short amount of time that we have. And it's weird, Tim, because, sheesh, I've been saying this now for a couple of years. You always seem to think that oh, yeah, this is it. This is the moment. I'm going to get into some world news next hour, too, and a little campaign news for Ron Paul, because I truly believe that Ron Paul, as a president, is the last best hope we have. If he doesn't get in, we're sunk. We're done. Yeah. As a country, we're done.
He's the only one that's going to stand up for any of us.
Absolutely. And, I hear, he's only one man. What can he do? Well, he could do a lot better. It's better than having no man in there.
Well, look at two presidents with executive signing statements. I mean, for crying out loud, Bush used them to the nth degree, and now Obama's using them. So, for crying out loud, it'd be nice to have Ron Paul use some executive signing statements to get rid of all this crap that we got from the last two presidents.
That's right. I mean, I can't even think about what this would do if or what the world's going to be like if Mitt for Brains Romney gets elected, or even another 4 years of Obama. And I remember saying to myself, it can't possibly get any worse than Bush. Oh, no. And guess what happened? It got worse. Yeah. I mean, I really couldn't fathom it. And then this NDAA crap comes along, National Defense Authorization Act, and followed up by this what do you call it? This new bill, H.R. 3166, that I can't get over it.
I'm really continued agenda here. It's an agenda that started, many years ago, but just seemed to get ratcheted up, tremendously from 9/11 onward. We've been rushing along at breakneck speed towards, God knows where, Joe. It's but between the two administrations, they seem to be carrying out an agenda for greater powers that be. Yeah, I don't really think that Bush conceived this on his own, nor do I believe Obama conceived any of this on his own. But they're both following an agenda for somebody that pulls the strings in this world, and where they're going, God help us all, especially with this electromagnetic weaponry, which has the potential to put thoughts in people's heads. And I know that sounds really weird and that sounds really bizarre, folks, but you better start looking into this. Start looking into SQUAD, SSSS, and you'll understand that this kind of technology is out there and has been out there for a long time and is very scary in the hands of the wrong people. SQUAD stands for Silent Sound Spread Spectrum Technology. So look that up.
Say that Google 5 times fast.
Yeah, exactly. But again, in the wrong hands. So look what they've done with technology in the wrong hands already. And you put this in the wrong hands, golly, I just shudder, Joe, to think about it.
I know. Absolutely. It is a very, very, very troubling thought for sure. And I'm putting that extremely lightly. So, folks, we got hour number 2 coming up. And hour number 2 is where we tie it all together. We're going to talk police state, the mysterious sounds, the
Scary
Eurozone
sound.
crumbling, very, very, very scary sounds, and Ron Paul. All that and more when hour number 2 starts. So don't go away. Remember, the email address is thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. And don't forget to listen to our new podcasts on the intelhub.com. Popeye and I bringing you some news. So we'll be back after these messages, folks. Stay tuned. Welcome aboard, everybody, to hour number 2 of Freedom Link Radio. I'm Joe Joseph. Along with me is my good friend Tim Watts of the AmericanTruthNetwork.com. Fantastic repository of websites and alternative media sources. Definitely a place to go take a look. So hour number 2 is here, folks, and we're going to be talking about these mysterious sounds that have been popping up all over the world. And I'm going to reference an article, theintelhub.com. Says mysterious sounds and booms continue to be heard throughout the world, and the explanations as to what they may be continue to flock in. The sounds can be described as industrial mechanical at times, and at other times they seem to be bizarre and creepy. That's putting it lightly. The Extinction Protocol, a blog specializing in covering possible doomsday events, recently released an article detailing the mysterious sounds and what they might be. The sounds range in description from bizarre and creepy to industrial mechanical. The sounds appear to be omnidirectional and seems to have no single traced source of origin or horizontal source of degree graduation, leaving one with the impression they're coming from directly overhead or directly underneath the earth. Disinformation campaigns have already been launched with claims that all the sounds recorded are a large-scale hoax through the use of putting the same audio in numerous videos taken throughout the world. This is clearly not the case, and this startling information gains even more importance when you consider a disinformation campaign was launched within 1 day of the story breaking worldwide. An interactive internet map has been set up that traces the mysterious booms, explosions, and sounds. And if you go to the Intel Hub, you can see the article, and they have a link to go to the map. So Tim has put together a compilation of what some of these sounds sound like, and then we're going to get into how do we have sounds that seem to come from inside the earth or up overhead. So Tim, could you play your audio clip for the listeners?
Absolutely. You know, and as one of my favorite people once said, Count Floyd, this is spooky, scary stuff, kids. So, you know, get close to the radio, maybe play with the volume a little bit. Hopefully these will come through okay. And these sounds have been heard, as Joe said, all the way around the world. Some of them right here in America, in Chicago, in Oklahoma, in Canada, you know, in other countries all the way around the world, ranging from Russia to Poland, to Costa Rica, Budapest, you know, you name it. These sounds have been everywhere. But let's start with the first few here, and let's see what we can find. I think the first one up is let's try Alberta here. Now, little break in the action here. You can hear the cars going by, and then the sounds actually will come up again. Gets quiet again. It's almost like it's on a cycle, Joe. No, that was sounds from Alberta, from Canada. And the exact same sounds were heard in Chicago, and here those are. Okay, I kind of messed up on that. That wasn't that was Chicago, but it wasn't exactly like Alberta. But Joe mentioned this earlier, that it sounds a lot like the sound of whales. But this is something, if you can imagine, this is overhead. It's omnipresent. It's everywhere, from one end of the horizon to another. And people are picking these up with just their home video cameras. So you can imagine how loud it is, just Absolutely. To the normal ear. Yeah. So now Absolutely. Here's go ahead.
Well, one thing I want to point out, folks, is that, when you're using something like HARP or a scalar type of technology, the sound can take many different forms depending on how they're using it. So we'll get into more like that, but we want to showcase as many of the different sounds that are out there. And believe me, this is happening all over the world. So you're talking about if it was just a big hoax, you're talking about a hoax coordinated on a grand scale. I mean, just tremendous. So go ahead, Tim.
Here's some sounds played in Budapest. This is what they heard there. Okay, that was Budapest. Now we've got more here. Let's see. Next on the list, we've got Costa Rica. Okay, that was a real quick clip. Some of them aren't as loud as others, and that's why I said you might want to stay by your volume on your computer or your phone, whatever you got. I think these are a little louder. This is from the Czech Republic.
All right, when we come back, folks, we're going to get into some of these sounds and what could be causing them. So sit tight, stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're listening to Freedom Link Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network. I cannot emphasize enough, folks, the importance to really diving into this subject area and understanding what the capabilities are of these elitists and what they have at their fingertips. It wasn't too long ago that the Nishin Maru, which is a Japanese oil tanker, experienced an explosion of some sort. Now, I put a document in the chat room that's from pvtr.org, and basically what it does is it gives you a synopsis of what occurred that day. It was shortly after midnight on July the 28th, 2010, and it was 6 days later that Al-Qaeda takes responsibility for it. Of course they're going to take responsibility for it. But what's interesting is if you look at the pictures, right, now they say that it was a bomb that went off up against the hull of this supertanker. But if you look at the pictures of the supertanker, there's no charring. There's no tearing of the metal. It's a big dent, as if something impacted it, but there was no debris. There was no boat. There was no object. There was no nothing. But what they saw was a bright flash and a big boom. And that was it. And it wasn't like an explosive boom. It was almost like a sonic boom. And that's what happened. That is indicative of an electromagnetic weapon.
And they travel at the speed of light, so, that would make sense. That's very scary when you see that picture.
It is scary because what you'll see, the actual explanation given was that it was a suicide bomber. Well, if it was a suicide bomber, they wouldn't look like that, first of all. So you have to understand what kind of characteristics that these play. Now, these sounds that you hear can also be manufactured through the use of longitudinal electromagnetic waves. They're so versatile in what they can do that you really have to do the research. Go look up Colonel Tom Bearden's work and read this stuff. A lot of it is way over our heads. I mean, technical gobbledygook that you just possibly, that in my wildest dreams I'll never understand. But it's all legitimate, peer-reviewed work. I'm not going to give you anything that's off in left field. Even though this kind of seems off in left field. But I'm not going to give you anything that's going to be not credible or unsourced. These are all credible sources. So please take the time and do the research, folks. But what we have here is these electromagnetic weapons being employed and this electromagnetic technology. And it's going along the same time that the Western economy is in its death throes. We're seeing the end of the Western economy. The powers that be know that the only way that they're really going to get a grasp on things is if they collapse the Western economy and bring in a one world currency. Because if they collapse the Western economy, well, the Eastern economy is going to fall with it because they rely heavily on the West and our consumption. So you're going to see this one world currency come in at some point in time. Even future President Paul has been talking about this a lot. As a matter of fact, I think it was the last debate. He talked about the intention of the special interests of the military-industrial complex to bring this one world currency in.
And it's happening, that's sure.
The only way they're going to do it, Tim, is to crash the economy. But they also know, Tim, that the United States is also the last real armed society. So they're going to have a way to deal with us, too.
Yeah, and that's why they've brought in all these new bills, all these new acts, with NDAA, with the SIP, the Strategic Implementation Plan, now with HR 3166. I mean, it's all culminating at one time, folks. You've got to question the impetus for why all of this stuff is all falling together from November onward. I mean, it's just like somebody is in a rush to get something done.
Right.
And there's a lot of people. I'm not the only one. I wrote a large article on the engineered collapse of this economy. And again, I'm not the first. But when you take a look at the Fed's, their reaction to the economic crisis and what they actually did to supposedly fix it, it's 180 degrees away from, what a sane economist might think about. I mean, they've just done nothing but pour more money and create hyperinflation. And they're actually trying to tip this thing. And then when you think about that, and then you kind of look at the NDAA and you see the setup of what's going on, they're anticipating something. They're anticipating the people picking up their guns and their torches and marching on Capitol Hill. I think that they're afraid. They know what they're going to do, but they also know the repercussions. They know that people are going to be pissed.
Yeah, people are going to be pissed. There's really no way around it. And unfortunately, we have a large section of society now that's heavily reliant on the federal government to sustain them. So should there be any interruption in that for any reason, and it could be a whole host of things, I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate. But if it should stop for any reason, I mean, you're going to see hell on earth. It really is going to just degenerate, which is why I cannot tell you enough to get out of the population centers. If you live in a population center, get out. Do what you have to do. Get out of the population centers while you still have the opportunity to do so. It's a really bad state of affairs. As a matter of fact, the Eurozone is already it's been in its death throes for a while. But now Fitch is saying that Greece is going to default, and it believes it will be orderly. How the hell do they know? Has anything in Greece been orderly lately? Have you seen their streets? Have you seen the people are leaving their children at school saying, "Take my child, I can't take care of him anymore." I mean, this is Greece. It's supposed to be a Western civilization, a civilized society. They're giving up their own children because they can't afford to live. And it's going to be orderly? Are you serious? Oh, couple that with the fact that, oh, by the way, ancient Greece sites could be soon available for rent. This is how the banksters, the elitists, this is how they do it. They bankrupt you, you get heavily into debt, and then they go and take all your stuff. And now they're going to be renting out the Acropolis. How the heck do you rent out the Acropolis? And for what?
They're saying it's going to get better here in America, Joe. I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, there's a lot of people buying, this BS and drinking the Kool-Aid. And I'm sorry, folks, it's not going to get better. I don't see anything coming. There's a lot of economists that say the same thing. Things are not getting better. You have to pay attention.
It's funny you say that, Tim, because while they may say that it's getting better, let me reference a couple of articles that may buck that trend. This is MSNBC. Fed to weigh further easing amid doubts about recovery. So they're already discussing, and they will be discussing at their January 24th and 25th meeting, about QE3. Because they're saying that the U.S. economy, and especially the housing market, needs a jolt with more quantitative easing. Easing, which is what? Printing money. Let's print some more money. Money for everybody. They're a bunch of freaking jerks, and they're crashing this economy. And it's time for you to get prepared. The system's going to fall. But are you going to be prepared for it? When we come back, we'll talk a little more about the economy. We're going to get into a journalist that's suing for the NDAA and Ron Paul. So stay tuned. Don't forget, folks, the next regularly scheduled broadcast of Freedom Link Radio is Thursday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern. So don't forget to tune in. We're talking about the economy right now and how that has a role to play in these elitist plans to just totally enslaved the human race, but we're not going to let them do that, you see. We're going to head them off at the pass. Going to round up the posse, baby, and get this stuff and actually take control. So anyway, the Federal Reserve having their meeting on January 24th and 25th to talk about more quantitative easing, more printing of the money, more devaluation of our currency. Because they say, what the hell, it's worth 2% of what it was in 1913. That's too much. 2% too much. So on Bloomberg, we got Charles Evans, who's the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago's president. Evans says jobless rate may rise as progress transitory. Is that how they call? That must be banker talk, Tim. You know, with his big pipe and his smoking jacket. Yes, the jobless rate may rise as progress is transitory. So basically what he's saying is the drop in the unemployment rate to 8.5% may be partially reversed in the coming months. Bloomberg quotes him as saying, I'm a little concerned that the most recent improvement is going to be transitory and it might move up from 8.5%. Evans said he forecasts that at the end of the year, we're not going to be very different from 8.5% unemployment. And basically, what that's saying is that things aren't going to get any better. If anything, they're going to get worse. Oh, that's great. How's that recovery working out for you, Tim?
Loving every minute of it, Joe. He said
I figured you would be. See, this is all part of the plan, folks. This is all part of the plan. Now, where these electromagnetic weapons come in to play, I don't know. But as I stated in hour number 1, you want to look at on the bioethics.org or .gov, www.bioethics.gov, go to meeting 4, session 10, where it talks about experimentation on the populace of the United States. And this is all sworn testimony of people. Go watch the video. As a matter of fact, you can read the transcript, or if you're too lazy to do that, which is cool because sometimes I feel like that too, they actually took video of all the testimony too, so you can watch it. But go look and watch how many people are talking about mind manipulation. You wouldn't believe the type of things that are being employed and tested right now on the American people.
And if any of these people get a chance, go out and attend some of these meetings and, maybe put your own 2 cents in, folks, because there's some coming up. I think you alluded to it earlier, Joe, the one in San Francisco, February 2nd through the 3rd, but there's also meetings coming up in, let's see, they've got Washington, D.C. is coming up in May. That's the 16th and 17th. You can see these right on the site that Joe told you about. But and then they've got some coming up in, well, see, Boston's done. So Chicago and Washington, D.C., Kansas City, and San Francisco. I guess those are the 4 big ones on tap. So if you folks are in that area, you might think about participating and actually attending those meetings.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Now, we were saying that, the United States is the last real armed society on the planet. And we really are. But the NYPD doesn't want you to have a gun. Oh, no. So, this is from CBS New York. Again, I can't BS you, folks. This is coming straight from the mainstream media. Why would they BS us? It says NYPD, feds, testing gun scanning technology, but civil liberties group up in arms. Terahertz imaging detection out to detect illegal concealed weapons. So basically, what you have, it says the NYPD is stepping up their war against illegal guns with a new tool that could direct or detect weapons on someone as they walk down the street. But is it violating your privacy? Police, along with the U.S. Department of Defense, are researching new technology in a scanner placed on police vehicles that can detect concealed weapons. Now, this looks eerily similar to something like the backscatter X-ray technology. And we know that in New York, they've got these roving vans that employ X-rays to look inside of vehicles and everything else. So this isn't unprecedented, folks, by any stretch of the imagination. But it's called the terahertz imaging detection. It measures the energy radiating from a body up to 16 feet away and can detect anything blocking it like a gun. And the idea, of course, is causing quite a roar with privacy. But Police Commissioner Raymond Kelly states, "Why, the scanner would only be used in reasonably suspicious circumstances and could cut down on the number of stop and frisks on the street." Do you believe it, Tim?
I'm not buying it. And, and what's the health risk to people getting scanned with these things? The drive-bys that they've got, with the cars and stuff. I often wonder,
Well, they started.
The are bad enough.
Right. Well, they started this thing at Logan Airport now where the TSA agents are wearing dosimeters because all of a sudden all these TSA agents are getting cancer. Oh,
no.
I'm telling you, man, I wouldn't pull the wool over your eyes, man. I wouldn't do it. Not to you.
Oh, they told us they were safe.
That's right. So all you frequent flyers out there that look like you got a cantaloupe growing out of the side of your head or Quato coming out your freaking belly, you might want to think about going through those scanners from now on. I'm just telling you.
Pat the boys down, Go ahead. I'm not going through the scanner. Pat the boys, do what you want, but I'm not going through the scanners.
I'll tell you what. Don't even pat the boys.
Well, yeah,
I mean, seriously though, dude. I mean, where's the threat? We hear of this terrorism. Oh, we need anthrax vaccines for children because, God forbid, we get, a big biological attack with anthrax. From who? Who? Why if we don't have these detectors, the planes are gonna fall out of the sky like rain. By who?
You should mention, Joe, also when we had the big anthrax scare, which, by the way, is the thing that kind of pushed the Patriot Act over the top, because 9/11 wasn't the real thing that did that. It was that anthrax scare, when they sent all that stuff out to Capitol Hill. And then they found out, they tracked it all the way back to Fort Detrick, a military base. And then, of course, where did that story go? Right down the toilet. Nobody talked about that anymore, once it was tracked back to Fort Detrick. So... how many people know that? I know a lot of your audience knows that, but, the anthrax scare, that stuff was all weaponized anthrax. It came from a U.S. military lab, folks.
Because it has to. That's what you need to understand, folks. It has to. In order for it to be weaponized and be able to disperse and get into your lungs and do what it has to do in order to make you sick on a mass scale, it has to be refined. And like I said, very few places throughout the world have the capability of refining anthrax down to that form. So all you got to do is follow the trail. And 9 times out of 10, it leads back to Fort Detrick. Whoops. Very, very sad state of affairs, folks, but this is what we're dealing with. So you have to prepare. You have to understand. Now, if you live within a population center, are you at risk for something like this? Yes, probably so. Probably so. And I say one of the bigger ones, one of the major population centers. I'm not talking about like, Sioux City, Iowa or something like that. No, Well, when we come back, it'll be the last segment of the show. And I've got 2 interesting stories I want to get to. So I'll speed it up, and in 3 minutes' time, we'll tackle these stories and we'll call it a night. So stay tuned. You're listening to Freedom Link Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Don't forget, folks, the email address is thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. That's thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. I want to bring to your attention that journalist Chris Hedges has filed a class action lawsuit against President Obama over his signing of the National Defense Authorization Act, claiming that the indefinite detention provision of the bill could see him sent to Guantanamo Bay simply for doing his job. Now, I want to give you what Chris Hedges is saying here. And basically, it goes like this. Plaintiff Christopher Hedges is a journalist whose profession requires, in part, that he have communication with and personal and direct intercourse with persons who are likely to be deemed engaged in hostilities with the United States under the Authorization for Use of Military Force Public Law 107-40 and the Homeland Battlefield Bill, that he travel to see and meet with such persons, that he report on the activity and beliefs of such persons, and through his journalistic endeavors to convey their philosophy and belief system to the public at large. This is very, very good news, because it's about damn time somebody actually went and took on the administration for this gross overreach of power. And what did you say? He's got cancer now, Tim?
Yeah, sadly enough, Chris Hedges has been battling cancer now for quite a while. And then, well, he's certainly swinging and still fighting, you know, which is nice to see. So, but you got to say a prayer for Chris Hedges, you know. Don't know how this crept up so fast, but.
No, absolutely. But this is important news, folks. It's important to know. It's important to see that somebody is taking the time and the effort to go and battle Leviathan and putting resources. This takes a tremendous amount of resources to sue the government. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of energy, which is why it's class action, because technically we're all being attacked here. So we all need to get on board and actually follow Chris Hedges' lead here. So follow
Absolutely.
that story for sure, because there's going to be a lot more to be seen with that. And the final story of the night, Paul campaign tells Newt, Santorum, and Perry it's over. You think Paul's telling them that, yeah, I'm hanging it up, can't take it anymore. I think I'm just going to quit. No. He's saying it's over because there's only 2 Republican candidates now on the Virginia ballot. One is Mitt for brains, and the other, Uncle Ronnie. That's right. 2-horse race in Virginia. 13 delegates up for grabs. And this comes from, this press release is out of Lake Jackson, Texas, which is Ron Paul's home. It says 2012 Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul, the constitutionally observant candidate of real change, will face down establishment candidate and notorious flip-flopper Mitt Romney in a head-to-head matchup in the Virginia primary. Steel cage and everything, folks. The 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals denied 4 candidates' appeals to appear on the ballot after their glaring failure to comply with the Commonwealth's stringent but widely known ballot access requirements. Now, Huntsman dropped out, and Santorum didn't file signatures with the Virginia State Board of Elections. Rick Perry and Newt Gingrich didn't file signatures but fell well short of qualifying. And then Rick Perry brought a suit against the state challenging the ballot access requirements to which all candidates were held, and others failed to qualify, joined the suit. When the suit was struck down, an injunction was filed in part to reconcile whether and when paper ballots would be printed. And today, the final decision was handed down. Virginia is the 12th largest state, and its primary election takes place on March 6th, which just so happens to be Super Tuesday. The absence of any other candidates on the ballot aside from Paul and Romney include serial hypocrite Gingrich and counterfeit conservative Santorum. For anybody that doesn't know what Santorum means, Google it.
Yeah, let's do that again now.
That's right. And it's sending a ripple effect throughout key early voting states, including South Carolina, where Palmetto State voters now are concerned about how their vote will affect the nominating process going forward.
You got that big bump yesterday from, what was it, Tom Davis?
Yes. Yeah, and you know what? That's huge, dude. That's absolutely huge.
Absolutely. And this is going to start defining, the race, for the Republican candidate here with South Carolina and moving on to Virginia. So good stuff for Ron Paul.
And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that he doesn't have his work cut out for him. He most certainly does. I mean, Mitt Romney probably gets 4 times the funding that Ron Paul does, because Mitt Romney's got big business and special interests behind him.
But nobody's got a grassroots base like Paul has. This guy has got a phenomenal grassroots base. And if anything, folks, this ought to prove to you, hey, don't believe the media. He can win. This guy's got as good a shot as anybody else.
He most certainly does. And one thing's for sure, that the people are behind him. Now, last night, there was a debate, Myrtle Beach. And Ron Paul was booed when, once again, he was talking about foreign policy. And what's interesting is, first of all, the majority of the people there were Tea Party. And we know that Tea Party's been coerced and corrupted and infiltrated and is now more of a neocon organization than anything else. And again, there are a lot of people out there with a lot of Tea Partiers that love Ron Paul. Ron Paul was the founder. He's the founding father of the modern Tea Party movement. But he made a very, very interesting point, and it's something that I've said for a long time, and it's the first time I heard him say it. And he said, I'm talking about closing bases overseas, not closing bases here. He says, if anything, I want to open bases here. I want to have more bases in the United States, not less. He says the bases should be closed overseas and brought here. And then what happens? Well, now you've got all these active duty military people that are back here. Instead of spending their money overseas, they're spending it here. That's a boon to the economy. I don't think people realize just how many active duty military there are. Just stationed overseas.
Bases around the world, Joe?
900 bases.
Yeah, 7 to 9, something like that. Hundreds of them.
That's absolutely unbelievable. And there was talk also today about shrinking the carrier fleet. As a matter of fact, Leon Panetta was talking about the defense, shrinking the defense budget. Well, of course, you got to shrink something if you are waging all these illegal wars. But they make a legitimate point here, folks. Sea power is a way of the past. It's going by the wayside quick. The technology that's being developed, we already know that there's scalar technology, but they also have anti-ship missiles that skim the water and go extremely fast. They're called carrier killers. And they're making the carriers obsolete. And it's funny because
right?
What's that?
Those are the new hypersonic weapons, right?
The hypersonic weapons, yes.
Indefensible.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so now they're saying, well, now we need more drones and everything else. And if you're talking about national security, yes, you're right. You want to evolve with the time and the threat. But one thing I can say for an absolute certainty is that these drones shouldn't be employed on our own people. So as this drone technology progresses, first of all, here's my worry, that our already almost non-existent privacy is going to be eroded even further, number one. But number two, more importantly, God forbid that we run into something very similar to Skynet. I mean, we're playing with technologies here that have very, very dangerous consequences. And it's going to take, it takes responsible people, people with morality that embrace their humanity. You need those people to be able to employ that technology effectively. Once you put evil into the mix and greed, all these bad characteristics and traits, that's when bad things start to happen. And that's what's happening now in the world. So, folks, I invite you to tune in again Thursday evening from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. for the next edition of Freedom Link Radio, where Tim and I will talk more about this stuff and much, much more. The email address to the show, thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. That's thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. Tim, thanks for coming out tonight, man.
Thank you, Joe. And to everybody out there, this is stuff you can take with you to work tomorrow. This is time to talk.
Everything was credible. Everything is sourced. So go and spread the word, my friends. We will see you again on Thursday evening. Take care.